Okay, let's go ahead and let's use the exam floors, and let's go ahead and select all 3 floors at the same time to import instead of doing them one at a time. So as always, the first thing we're going to do is the scale. Brian, what is the scale from here to here? Do you remember?
I don't remember the scale, but since this is I believe it's a DWG file, or is it a PNG?
This is a PNG.
Okay, if it's a PNG file, I don't believe it was scaled. So as we'd mentioned in the previous videos, you always want to scale the drawing. If you cannot use a scale that's on the drawing, like in this case, and he searched all 3, there's no scale, you don't want to scale off of a doorway, because scaling off of a doorway, you have a very small sampling. And if you're off just a little bit, you're going to be off by a great deal when it scales out. If you can find the address, you could scale off Google Earth. But if you can't find the address and you can visit the building with a measuring wheel or a laser measurer, you can measure the longest possible wall and then use that as your scale because you actually measured it. So we're going to pretend that the 2 of us visited this building and we measured ourselves, and we're going to put in the measurements here. How many feet do you want to make that? 1, 2, 3. That's going to be about 90 or 100 feet, somewhere in there, I think. With that,
go ahead and use 100 feet. Now, the important thing is when you're doing the scaling on a multi-floor is that you scale each floor very, very closely to each other.
Every floor needs to be scaled individually because every floor is not always the same. Some buildings taper in, some have towers that go up one side versus going up all the way evenly. And sometimes it may be not the floor that changes, but the office space that's available to your customer on each floor. So you want to make sure you scale them all properly. And you also want to make sure that you align them well. When you're aligning your building, you do not want to use the corner of the building because the buildings can taper as they go in. You want to use something that goes straight up the building, either an elevator shaft or a stairwell, something you know that goes from floor to floor to floor and is on each floor when possible.
Now, here's another thing that we just identified here as we look at this multi-floor building is that the 2nd floor and the 3rd floors are not the same dimensions as the very 1st floor. And in that case, this area right here is not part of the consideration. And we measured this area right here. Now, if we look at floor number 2, you're going to see that that area does not exist here. So this right there, as we look, there is one of the stairwells. There's the other stairwell. And if we go back to the 1st floor, we can see those 2 stairwells here. So we know that those 2 align. So let's take a look at this right here for consideration of our scaling. And it says 163, we'll make it 165 feet. And now let's go to our 2nd floor. This would be the same dimension. And let's make sure of that. There's this stairwell right here. And there's that stairwell. So this would be the same dimension there. So let's go ahead and make this 165 feet as well.